The power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus is my shepherd, I shall not want. It maketh me to lie down in green pastures. It leadeth me beside the still waters. It restoreth my soul. It leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for its name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. For the power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus is with me, and its rod and its staff, they comfort me. It prepareth a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. It anointeth my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Most certainly goodness and mercy shall continue to follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus forever. What's happening? Benton here. Broke down at a truck stop in Virginia. Recently we were broke down where? At a truck stop in Alabama. Old Alabama. Got towed off the interstate for the first time ever. Broke down on the interstate for the first time ever. That was fun. Managed to just barely kiss the guardrail. Did almost no damage to the truck. Slightly damaged the step, very slightly, perhaps. I mean, who knows? Could have already been there, but I think I would have noticed. So slight damage, but that was after turning off the engine, which was already seized up. So hard to know that going down the road. Yeah, the engine seized up. Thankfully, it had oil in it. Otherwise, old Benton would be in trouble. Right. Trouble. You know, it's like, it's got oil in it. You sure it had oil in it? You sure it's got oil in it? Yeah, there's oil in it. Yeah. My job is done. Yeah, going down a grade. Applied the old engine braking so as not to exceed the posted speed limit any further than I already was. And wondered, why ain't the engine brake working? And then next thing I know, engine shutdown imminent, or whatever it says. Engine is going to shut down. There's a red light that comes on the dash that says stop. So then I look, oh, look, no oil pressure. Well, that's interesting. And in the mountains of Virginia, you know, it's like, all right, got to figure out where to stop this bitch. You know, so in the process of where to stop it, and like I said, the engine was seized up already, but I had no way to know that. You know, turned it off and wrestled it to the shoulder, losing the power steering, of course, and let the company know. So now I'm at a truck stop. Supposedly, a driver is bringing me a replacement tractor leaving out of Chicago sometime Monday. And then whenever they get here, I guess they're taking my the broken down tractor back to Chicago, presumably, for rebuild the engine or whatever they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do. I'm assuming in Chicago they can find a rebuilt motor and throw in this bitch. I'm assuming. I don't know. I'm not a mechanic. Hypothetically, I get $257 a day to sit around all weekend. Oh man, yeah, we got people who are behind the times. But shout out to Angry Rooster in the chat. Whatever that may be, right? Whoever or whatever that may be. A username. Hello, sir, madam, baby, child, whatever. Hello, Angry Rooster. These were some angry roosters. I'm glad you're here, Angry Rooster, because that's the perfect way to describe two of the three fellas that eventually responded to tow old Benton off the interstate. Well, actually, just one Angry Rooster, and then I don't really know how to describe the other two fellas, but if you've ever been around the type of fellas that drive heavy wreckers, or, you know, small town country folk Virginians, one of which who seemed to be a drunk, the angry rooster seemed to be a drunk, just based on the appearance of his nose, solely going by what his nose looked like. He came in a little van, old-timey Ford van, I believe. And, you know, from the late 70s, early to mid-80s. Almost comically, right? Kind of looking like the Mystery Machine in a way. But more of like a work van version of the Mystery Machine. That's that body style, right? And with sort of a homemade, you know, road service and a phone number on it. And just immediately started barking orders, angry rooster style, which is interesting. And then it's like, oh, this is the expected spiritual attack, I guess. Is this what it is? Because Benton don't like to be ordered around. Benton's never liked to be bossed around and ordered and bandied about. So, I mean, the immediate tone is if, you know, just treated like I'm a moron. But here's the thing is, the reality is to live in a big rig and do long haul, you know, on some level, he's not wrong. It's at least a performance. It's the performance of a fool and a dum-dum and a bozo on some level, right? On some level. Such a foolish thing. And, you know, learning later that he apparently used to have his own trucking company, 60 trucks. I mean, who knows? Who cares? But I guess he's a pretty skilled mechanic, it sounds like, this angry rooster fella. And probably around my age, maybe a little younger, hard to tell, or less old as it may be. And, you know, rootin' tootin' Virginian, you know, and I'm a 140-pound bozo truck driver to him, right? And again, scratch that, that's a violation. That's not what I am, certainly. But performing as 140-pound white feller, white southerner bozo. Yeah, performing as. Now doing business as, right? DBA, doing business as. Within the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. Doing business as Benton. Benton would like to go to the Walmart at some point, which is about 13 miles away, I think. I made some comments in passing about the music here at the truck stop, and one of the ladies that works here, who might be getting off work soon, perhaps might be willing. We haven't discussed this. It's just my read of the situation. Is although she probably has things to do, go home to the kiddies, you know, go home to the children, right? In fact, little Gen Z fella running around, I could probably actually maybe get him to take me to Walmart for $20, but no rapport was established. I seem to have established a rapport with this lady. But then you get into the psychology of, you know, you got to kind of catch her by herself, because, you know, people aren't really free to speak, you know, when they're around their coworkers and the local, you know, that whole local community thing, right? It's like, I don't know, man, I might rather just chill the fuck out on Sunday. I don't have to go to Walmart today. It won't really be pressing until I've moved into the new tractor, which I'm sure is not new, but it won't really be, the Walmart trip won't really be pressing until then. Although the eggs, I'm trying to think of, if I skip one egg drink, then I'll be good. Well, see, that's the thing, is I'll wake up, yeah, I'll be good all the way through Monday. So, yeah. So that means Tuesday morning, if this goes into Tuesday morning, you know, the outrage and horror. Do they sell eggs in here, though? They might actually. I bet there's somewhere around here within walking distance I can buy some eggs. It's got to be possible. I think there's a Dollar General, maybe. Not exactly sure. They have eggs, right? Sometimes. I don't know. Who knows? Priorities. And just when I thought I was going to be able to get my nutritional supplements at the Amazon locker, foiled again. You know, maybe I can call Amazon and maybe they'll extend the time. Who knows? We'll see. Will they grant me another? Will they grant me a reprieve? Right? Can we have the guard? Can the governor commute our sentence? Right? Yeah. This is your life, sir. Oh, you mean slow process of death? Okay. Well, and it's all fun and games till these lights stop working, because remember, we can't start the engine. So, yeah, the cold is one thing. Dealing with it, and it's like, yeah, I could absolutely go to a motel, sure. I mean, is that even worth fucking with? It's not like I was able to get parked into a parking space. We're just like on the lot, you know, which I don't think is going to be a problem. But that whole captain of the ship thing, where it's like, yeah, you know. It's really better if they're paying me $257 a day. I mean, let's be real. If I actually get paid for that, I mean, I'm happy to hang out in the truck for $257 a day, and I have a flashlight. The fact that I've never bought any kind of lamp or fuck, I could have one of them kerosene lanterns, for fuck's sakes. Yeah, why not one of those, buddy? Yeah, I've got a flashlight, so I guess once the lights stop working, it's cold enough. I mean, the fridge is. The eggs will stay cold, right? I don't know. Anyway, back to the angry rooster barking orders. Hilarious barking of orders and talk to like I'm stupid for existing. And then, so in the past, kind of, it's funny to process it in the moment and to realize, well, this really would have bothered me prior to the unlocking of the achievement within the, world of death and the game of lies. Of true knowledge of self. Like, yeah, this really would have bothered me to have this bozo show up. Probably would have had to give him a piece of my mind, right? Which is probably what he wants. Probably wanted me to give him a piece of my mind. But, you gotta have to push back. I had to push back at a certain point. And hit them where it hurts. They're these people's poor diet. But and also I do a thing sometimes where I just start bossing them around. If somebody's going to boss me around, I'll just start bossing them around. But almost got to that stage and just realized. And then looking back on it, he's probably drunk. So, like, who even cares at that point? And then, learning bit by bit these details of somebody's life. Something about used to have 60 trucks and had a $3 million divorce or whatever. Well, meanwhile, $3 mil ain't shit, partner. But yeah, that's why he points at the van and he's like, yeah, that's why I'm driving around in this thing. I don't know, or maybe the alcoholism, sir. Not exactly sure. One or the other, but whatever. Talking about buying his 28-year-old son a house. Shout out to Millennial Steam and some of these. And I know Millennial Steam he's not a fan of the black pill. Well, neither am I, sir. I'm not a fan of the black pill vernacular, but it's a handy way for people to understand. It's a handy label for people to understand a genre. So other black pilled folks, right? It's this idea that, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, work hard, get a job. But, there's 28-year-olds out there and their daddy just buys them a house because apparently the kid he married some woman or whatever, and they're going to bilk the state out of money by housing a bunch of disabled children, right? And it all sounds very above board, right? It all sounds very, this is, a wondrous sacrifice, when in reality, there are some folks who just out of the goodness of their heart do those things. But, I've seen enough of these true crime cases and enough of these body cam videos and interrogation videos that, people who make their living, housing the disabled, that's not always the best type of folks, sadly. But who knows? I could be wrong. And I'm not even, who knows, like for real, who knows? But yeah, just these interesting experiences. So it's just sort of almost watching this thing, as an out-of-body experience, but then at times sort of bristling at getting bossed around and talked to like I'm a moron. But it's not completely invalid because, there's no respect in driving a truck. It's not possible to respect somebody who lives in a big rig and drives around the country delivering freight. That's not respectable. It's just not. Now, in my world, having 60 trucking company, having a fleet of 60 trucks and living a certain type of life is also not respectable. But see, this is where you get to normies rush in to normalize everything that's congruous or congruent, rather. Everything not incongruous, and society, being birthed, entering into this matrix through my mother's matrix, another word for womb, and things are happening, and that somehow seems to validate at a consensus level. So the consensus is, well, that's respectable to drive the truck long enough to then make bets and take risks enough. Okay, now 2 trucks, 3 trucks, and now a fucking shop and a terminal and, whatever skeleton crew of staff, right? Now we're job creators, 60 trucks. Again, unsustainable, right? Like, okay, what's the point? Now you're driving around in the, somebody bought the mystery machine at auction, sir, and you've stenciled your his drunk ass stenciled, his, roadside service with a phone number, right? And you're driving around town drunk. But I mean, whatever, dude. I'm not hating. It's just, the sort of the perception or the social contract, the status quo, and then, so when a person like that shows up and starts treating me like a piece of garbage, then isn't that really saying everything about him and says nothing about Benton, right? So what's there to be offended about? But then, man to man, got to sort of stand up for yourself at some point, right? The royal we, anyway. It's all very interesting, to be sure. I think I did manage to, the people who showed up in the heavy wrecker still operating a successful business, right? Even if it's just, hey, every once in a while, it's like being a fisherman, I guess. Every once in a while, some 18-wheeler breaks down and then they get to go tow it, So $715, which to me actually is fairly reasonable. I hate to say it, but, talking to the owner of the company I work with, that I'm allowing to employ me, although I'm not even an employee. I'm a contractor. So the company that I'm allowing to, I'm contractually obligated to in some way, right? I did sign a contract, or Benton DBA, doing business as Benton did, right? Under Benton's own Social Security number. Because when we look at what Social Security numbers represent, and we look at Social Security as a program, and we examine, foreigners either being able to get their own Social Security cards or more or less just buy them, right? However that works. It's like, yeah, why shouldn't Benton be able to get $1,700 or $1,800 a week on a 1099 on a Social Security number? That I was born here, and my parents, after sacrificing me to Moloch's machine, at some point signed me up for it. And in fact, all of my labor prior to this and 2 other, aborted, or, first time I think was 4 weeks. The second job was 7 weeks. And so all of my other employment for my entire life, was on a Social Security card and paid FICA taxes, paid into Social Security. So why wouldn't I use this thing that the government and the corporations are happy to bring, tens of millions of people here from other lands? Like, why wouldn't I take $1,800, $257 a day, and not pay the taxes, right? Why does anybody pay taxes? See, because once we remove the status quo and we remove the social contract aspect, and looking at what the taxes actually fund, right, and then looking at the example and the teachings of Christ from the Bible, remember after baptism, oh, well, he's a carpenter, Well, after baptism, no job, no tax liability, and in fact, didn't even handle money. And so like, oh, the mark of the beast, to buy and sell. Yeah, it's money, homie. That is money, right? This is the mark of the beast. I hate to break it to everybody, but that's the mark, right? Chair. That's the mark. It's like people have speculated on what it is, and oh, maybe it's this, maybe it's that, maybe it hasn't came here yet. That's going to be this. No, it's this. It's here. It's here the whole time. This is the mark of the beast. It's the money. It's the fiat, and the digital electronic forms as well. Of course, obviously. What do they say? The mark in the hand and something about the forehead, right? Well, how far removed is society from some version of a chip, or nanotech that may already be there, could already be there, or just brain scans, right? How long before, whatever credits have accrued to old Benton here, in a doing business as legal sense, how much longer before that's just it's readable through my fucking brain waves or whatever, right? I'm already walking around with earbuds and then walking away from the phone into the truck stop to get my laundry. And it's like, oh, that's right. Forgot that I walked away from the phone. Better pull the fucking Bluetooth out of my ears, because what happens is it just cranks the juice up to maximum. It's like, oh yeah, I got a little bit of a headache now. It wore off, but yeah, a little bit of a headache. I mean, this is $20 technology here, folks. I mean, what even is this? So you're going to tell me that it's not going to be possible? It's just possible already. It's probably already happening. Some version of whatever technology is out there, in some way scanning my brainwaves, right? Oh, well, you sound this type of way, you sound that type of way. Who cares? Go back to Gene Hackman, Enemy of the State. How did these schizophrenic street people on the corner sound 25 years ago? I'd like to have recordings of some of those diatribes delivered, some crazy old man on a corner somewhere, some street person. Just, play that shit back and just listen to it and go, well, yeah, that's pretty much all here. So who cares what it sounds like? Oh, well, you sound this way, you sound that way. Yeah, in a context, on a timeline, sure, it sounds some type of way. Why does it sound some type of way? Status quo, social contract, peer groups. That's the framework. The framework is status quo, social contract, conformity to peer groups. That's what provides you sound this way. Yeah, right now. And in 20 years, people are just going to be like, oh, yeah, of course. Well, absolutely, of course. Of course, the technology was scanning his brain waves in 2025. Are you crazy? Be crazy not to know that. Everybody knows that. But hey, status quo, social contract, conformity to peer groups in 2025 is like, I don't know, man. Maybe, but not yet. Right? Okay, well, Benton's crazy, right? Okay, sure. And to exist, again, this is your life. Oh, you mean the slow process of death? This is your slow process of death? Well, what I am will never know death. So how is it my slow process of death? Meaning, if that's what life is in the context of the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, you're saying, okay, Benton, this is your life. And I'm like, well, that was a TV show, but yeah, I understand life is breakfast cereal. Mikey likes it. Yeah, I understand all of that. And most don't. Although, again, the subconscious mind perfectly decoding symbols, everybody knows it, right? Everybody knows that this ain't life. And I'm listening to Keno Casino earlier, going in on iDubbbz, and PPP, the fat guy, he's talking about nihilism. And then later on, he describes himself as a nihilist unironically, and he has to hear the words coming out of his mouth. And I'm listening to him. I said, oh, you just described nihilism, buddy. He espoused his own nihilistic beliefs, right? Just 5 minutes after accusing iDubbbz of nihilism, and that's okay. It's completely fine. This is, again, the Orwellian doublethink. It's all of this Moloch's machine, it's psychology via Moloch's machine. Of course, the person looks at someone else as nihilistic, and then they themselves are nihilistic. There is no possibility of external meaning here. So in order for that to be, you can't have a realm with no possibility of external meaning without the individuals who, through the subversion of their creative force, are perpetuating and energizing and moving the delusory and illusory realm along. In order for it to lack meaning, those individuals have to be performing based on what? A lack of meaning. See? A lack of external meaning. And that's what the status quo, social contract, conformity to peer groups. It facilitates all of that. See? It facilitates all of this. But then, you can't be a nihilist, right? Well, what do you mean? Be a nihilist? How can the being be anything? How is there a being, right? What is beingness? I would say until the individual even understands those concepts well enough to say, well, wait a minute, okay, what does it mean? What is beingness? What does it mean to be a being, right? And these are the basic fundamental building block levels that I myself skip past to some extent, but I've noticed many years ago that the general public, especially the intelligent ones, or the, maybe the ones who seem a little more enlightened, which is just less fucking unconscious and lost, really. That's what that is. But, most people seem to rush headlong into sophistication and complication, and that benefits the system itself. Moloch's machine, certainly. And the performance then seeking to create an image, a graven image to uphold before Moloch, the deity, the pagan deity, to say, is this good enough? And then if it's good enough, well, here's your fiat, right? So that was this trucking company guy. It wasn't that he pulled himself up by his bootstraps. It wasn't that he, outsmarted and outworked the competition. It's that Moloch's machine needed people to be, to start these owner-operator fleets of trucks, to serve evil and to serve wickedness and to serve death and to serve destruction, right? That's what needed to happen at the time. Are we breaking up? What's up, Rick? Good to see you. Well, and see, now it's, I thought you got out of trucking, right? Angry Roosters now, I thought you got out of trucking. Well, who cares what you think? What you think, what's the relevance of what you think, Angry Rooster? Like, what does that mean, right? What is the relevance of what Angry Rooster thinks? See? And so this is another leveling up, within the context of the, waking dream, surrealistic unreality and also, again, in the context of true knowledge of self, right? Previous iterations of Benton, right? Previous iterations of Benton, it's like, you, Angry Rooster, had thoughts while interacting with previous iterations of Benton? Okay, that's your problem. So what? What does that mean? And then it's by implication, it's to say, well, Benton, you formed a crystallized version of a dynamic being, a beingness, right? That can only ever continue to expand, grow, change, evolve, and crystallization is the slow process of death. Like that's to identify with the slow process of death. It's to then go back and go, you're right, or maybe just, you're mistaken. Whereas to be identified with what I am, that creative force says, well, who cares what you think, buddy? We're the royal we's too busy on the new shit to go. We're going to build a time machine and address what Angry Rooster thought. And remember, this is the status quo, social contract, conformity to peer groups. It's the peer group saying, now, wait a minute. We signed off on truck driving, and then we thought you left truck driving, and then you was kind of maybe cast out in a way. And now maybe, oh, it looks like he's back to truck driving, so let's go check in with him. See, maybe now he's back to performing something that the royal them can sign off on, right? Oh, well, now Benton seemingly is performing something that the status quo, the social contract, and the peer group will sign off on. So, oh, let's come back and say, well, oh, I thought you got out of this, right? Which is almost to say, hey, buddy, we need you to repent. Because didn't you leave this thing and now you're back? We need our pound of flesh. Where is your repentance, sir? Have you seen the error of your ways? Right? Are you, is recalcitrant the right word? I don't know. Do I even want to go to the phones? Do I want to go to the phones? Probably not. But do you see what I'm showing you here? Right? Do you see what I'm showing you here? And these are all instructive lessons if the individual, and I don't mean me, if the individual is capable of receiving instruction, right? Or the individual can be like an angry rooster, which is fine. I mean, imagine being an angry rooster, right? Whether literally, metaphorically, or both, and then, showing up drunk in a van, right, to first confirm. And what's the job of Angry Rooster when he showed up at my truck yesterday was that I talked to the owner of the trucking company, and I said I think it seems like it's seized up to me, but I'm not a mechanic, so we got to get an actual mechanic out there to immediately confirm, yeah, it's seized up. Okay, well, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm capable of figuring that out, but I'm not a mechanic, and that's fine. Meanwhile, he could also be mistaken, but, it's almost certainly seized up. And, he's the guy who has a personal friendship. So this is where you get into local communities in small town. He's got the relationship with the heavy wrecker guy, see? So, because the heavy wrecker's got to come tow this bitch. It's a full rig. What are we weighing? I don't know. 60,000 pounds. 20, 30 tons. Somebody's got to come drag this bitch off the interstate. And so he's able to get on the cell phone, and heavy wrecker shows up. And of course these guys are all in a big fat hurry because they know $1,750. However, they split that amongst the three of them. The heavy wrecker guy, and I guess probably his son, or, again, Nepo babies, or whatever you want to call it. Keep it in the family, or family friend, or whatever. And, here come the roosters, right? Which is, I mean, whatever. I grew up around this sort of thing. It's not a big deal. And then, who are they towing off the interstate? Half the time it's going to be some foreigner, or, there's going to be a language barrier. So I would say that just the fact that Americans have allowed people other than myself, or a black fella, right? Just regular old white folks and black folks, why would this guy have a positive view of Benton when he shows up? It's like, oh, here's just another bozo driving a truck in America. And, his own feelings of resentment around, being a success and being able to, probably had a decently attractive wife and a big home. And then, she divorced him and took, whatever there was to take, right? And, this is your life, sir. And so then when Angry Rooster shows up in the chat, and it's like, I thought you got out of trucking, glad to see you back in the saddle. Oh, glad to see me back serving death, you mean? But glad to see me back DBAing, right? Doing business as in the context of the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. It's like, yeah, of course. Happy to see you transacting in fiat currency, sir. Well, I'm sure you are, as a servant of death, right? As a lover of death, right? I'm sure you are, Angry Rooster. Because remember, status quo and social contract means the moment that the individual who's already disliked right? Who's already rejected because this world doesn't know anything about love and can't generate love, doesn't know anything about justice, can't generate or access justice. So it only knows love based on the lack of love. It only knows tolerance based on the lack of tolerance. So the default state of society is to withhold love and to withhold tolerance. But it can't even provide love and tolerance. So the way it provides love and tolerance is it blasts ridicule and mockery at every individual, and then if they status quo and social contract and conform to peer groups, it removes much of the ridicule and mockery, but continues to mock and ridicule, or at least threaten to. And in fact, part of the mind control is that the individual, because society is always operating within their own brains, the individual continues to mock and ridicule themselves in their own head. See? And so what begins to seem like love and acceptance is, oh, well, there's this warm blanket of social contract and peer groups that are here to carry you in their warm, loving embrace, except there ain't no warm, loving embrace. That shit don't exist, partner. You know, so here's Angry Rooster right on time to offer his warm, loving embrace that don't exist. It's merely, oh, look, he's might be doing the thing. Now let's remind him via mockery and ridicule. Let's use guilt, fear, and shame to say, well, I thought you got out of trucking, right? And it's almost it's almost an accusation. Well, wait a minute, buddy. You know, what about this thing? What about that thing? And it's also under the auspices of to always define oneself in relation to the world of death and the game of life, to define the being, defining the being in relation to the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. And so once the veil is lifted, and I'm not a huge fan of that saying, but once the achievement of true knowledge of self is unlocked, now the being, again, DBA, Benton, doing business as, can clearly see these things and explain them. Now, if people have ears to hear or don't, not Benton's concern, but this is what society is doing. This is what society is performing. Right? Society's not respectable, right? Society is wicked and fallen. Society loves death, right? Well, of course it does. This is a slow process of death. So when we talk about toxic positivity, or we talk about bootstrapping, or we talk about, well, you know, it's basically each individual is obligated to go out here and work and produce for society to contribute. To contribute to what? A collective slow process of death, and to, in fact, learn to love a slow process of death. What's lovable about a slow process of death? What's there to love in that? Nothing. And that brings us to no possibility of external meaning. If there can't be something to love in a slow process of death, how can a slow process of death have any meaning whatsoever? When meaning is what I am. What I am is the way, what I am is the truth, what I am is the life. No one comes unto true knowledge of self except through Christ consciousness. See? Now, not in a dogmatic, doctrinal way, right? Using the framework of the psychology of Moloch's machine and the book, right? And the religion, taking those concepts abstractly and removing them from the greater whole and then remixing them, right? Because that's what the spirit of what I am does. And then representing it, see? Representing it, see? Representing the Christ story, the resurrection of the risen Christ within me. That's what it is, see? It's to actually take the bits and the pieces of the story and the teachings and to do the damn thing, right? To do the damn thing, and then to represent what's already been presented, but to represent it properly when what is continuing to be presented through the slow process of death and through Moloch's machine is Christianity. It is the passion play of the Christ story, but it's in the framework of a slow process of death. Therefore, all they that hate me, or all they that hate what I am, love death. See, it's all right there in the Bible. If the being has the eyes to see, right? If, not by going into the church, not by listening to the pastor or the preacher, not by being ministered to, not by reading the book and just saying, okay, well, that's all lovely. Now let's go back to serving vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions. But then, of course, Benton, as he says those words, knows that he will immediately be accused of, well, you have a job and you do this and you do that and you've done this and blah, blah, blah. You're guilty also. See? Okay, well, look at what they did to Jesus in the Bible, right? They accused him, they put him on trial, and they executed him for sedition, for speech or actions that threatens the very system of things. So yeah, please accuse me. If I'm not being accused, I'm doing something wrong, buddy. You better be in here accusing me, angry rooster. If you're going to serve your master, Satan, if you're going to serve your master, antithesis, if you're going to serve Moloch and his machine, you best be in here accusing Benton. See? Otherwise, how's your master going to be pleased? Because make no mistake, every individuated being in this realm is undertaking a process via the slow process of death of pleasing one of two masters. There is no middle ground. Make the tree good or make the tree rotten. See? And to come in and celebrate, oh, well, it looks like Benton's back to... No, absolutely not. Benton's doing the damn thing. See? And taking credit for it. Right? And going to continue on. See? And we'll just happily walk right on out of here anytime it suits him. You know? Happily just walk on out of here anytime it suits him. And maybe one day, the DBA won't need to do business at all, right? And that's to return, that's the return to source. That's the return to so-called God or whatever you're calling it. That's the idea that, Christ executed for sedition on the cross, then entombed, traveling the underworld, which I'm still, working with that concept. What exactly went on in the underworld? Then resurrected, arising from the dead 3 days later. And a lot of this is going to be largely symbolic, but then seen publicly, like, hey man, here I am. And then what? Ascending to the heavenlies, getting up out of here, mission accomplished. Beam me up, Scotty, right? Returning to source, which means to leave the delusion. So the slow process of death is to believe oneself to have been birthed into delusion, right? But not knowing it's delusion, taking it as very, very real, taking it as presented, right? And the Christ story is, here's a being who every step of the slow process of death knew exactly where he was in that process and understood all of the meanings and symbols, right? And understood how it worked. And realized, he was able to, within the context of delusion and illusion, basically, run the equivalent of a 4-minute mile. Because these other beings like myself, I need to see somebody run a 4-minute mile. And then I'm like, I can run a 4-minute mile. And now Benton's run his own 4-minute mile, meaning unlocking the achievement of true knowledge of self, which Christ apparently just came out of the box with the true knowledge of self, seemingly. Or it, happened at a very young age, right? And, to know exactly what he is. The moment the being knows exactly what they are, well, now they know exactly what they are not, and pretty quickly can say, oh, wow, yeah, look, this entire realm operates and is designed to make an enemy of what I am. So here comes the persecution, and Christ from the Bible saying, well, the servant is not greater than the master, meaning you saw what they did to me. What do you think they're going to do to you, buddy? So if the being actually is going to facilitate the resurrection of the risen Christ within me, I will be treated as Christ was treated. 100%. Now it'll be an updated 2025 version of it, right? A nouveau crucifixion, right? Maybe it's a psychological crucifixion, you know. Why is old Benton one of those pain don't hurt motherfuckers, right? The physical tortures and pain, I'm not quite sure are really going to suffice. I think that's where we get into, the idea of, part of the military intelligence having that. We've all seen that famous patch by now. In fact, maybe we'll show that on screen here. Probably not. I don't even have my hotspot on. But the idea, it says something about psyops because physical wounds heal, right? So this is the era of psychological warfare. This is the era of psyops. This is not the era of, Benton's going to be fucking beaten up. It's, put the phone book on his head and then hit him with whatever so it doesn't leave a mark. Like, that shit's over. Now, I'm not saying it won't happen. I'm just saying, like, no, it's a new phase. It's a new era, right? Now it's psychological, see? And mockery and ridicule are the most readily available, and they're the most they're the weapons of the normies, and just the regular folks will immediately go to mockery and ridicule, and they won't even realize they're doing it, and they're doing it to themselves in their own heads. See, and yeah, Benton has a version of that in his own head, but he certainly has observed the internal space enough to know it when it's happening, right? It's the idea of spiritually attacking oneself or gaslighting oneself, right? Yeah, of course that's a thing. Why wouldn't Moloch, update the code of the psychology at some point to say, well, okay, now things have progressed enough within Moloch's machine. Oh, we can actually have these motherfuckers psyop and spiritually attack themselves, via some version of the Orwellian psychology, right? Why not? Again, yet more weapons formed against Benton, right? And what does the quickening spirit do? The quickening spirit sees the formation of the weapon, and the weapon is aimed at the quickening spirit, and the quickening spirit can always vibrate at a slightly higher level no matter what. So that by the time the attack is launched, as long as the quickening spirit is properly identified within themselves based on uncovering and walking the perfected path that lies within, well, it's a simple matter to see the missiles that have been launched, and almost like the Top Gun, the NES video game, to take evasive action, quicken the spirit, vibrate out of the way of the attack, and the missiles fly by and then explode harmlessly into the ocean, metaphorically. See? Right? That's what Benton is and what Benton performs. See? It's Benton as performer via performance in a vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions with ever-present aspects of waking dreams, surrealistic, unreality, deja vu all over again. See? And here's your sign. Here's the proof that this realm is never, ever entirely as presented or real. It can't ever be real and tangible. That ain't possible. Now, can it seem very real? Sure. Can it seem very tangible? Yeah, it seemed somewhat real getting towed off the interstate yesterday. It seems very real being in the big rig where it's now, we're not even to the coldest part of the morning. We got a couple of more hours probably, or an hour or two, whatever time it is, 5:24, if that's the accurate time. It's getting to be the coldest part of the morning, right? And no need to solve the problem. That's a mere sensation, the sensation of cold. Benton can jump out of the cab and go, double time or brisk walk a couple of laps around the truck stop, come back here, and it'll feel warm. Or make another egg drink, and then be warmed up by the spices and the hot liquid of the drink, right? So that's the sensations of the dead flesh. Well, that's easy to deal with. Lust. Well, that's easy to deal with, right? Desire for material goods or desire to be seen a certain way by other people. Well, that's easy to deal with. And people are like, what do you mean? That's all very difficult. Those are very imprisoning. Yeah, for them, the hordes of normie NPCs, the regular folk bozos, yeah, it's not easy for them. For what I am, it's child's play. See? And that's not to brag, and that's not to falsely claim something. I'm telling you the reality on the ground. See? I'm telling you the reality of what's happening here. Okay? I'm accurately describing what's going on. And how does Benton know that all of these things are easy? Because Benton was strongly identified with his dead flesh, also known as the Son of Man, right? Does your pastor or your preacher know that? Does the church know that? What is Son of Man? It's dead flesh. Why did Jesus talk so much about Son of Man? It means the dead flesh, man. It's dead. And so all they that hate so-called air quotes God love death. Well, those are people who are identified with their flesh, right? They're identified with their offspring. They're identified with, what can accrue to them in a business transactional sense that will make, that will comfort their flesh, that will satiate their flesh, right? And it's in some ways to apply a salve, right, to something that's dead. And there's this idea that Christ's body, after being entombed, that apparently there's an idea that people went in there and applied various oils and frankincense and all of these things, right? Well, isn't that some version of a metaphorical salve? It's like, yeah, let's see what ointments, right, can we apply to this flesh to reanimate it, right? Meanwhile, within the context of a slow process of death, this body isn't alive. This body's dead. So what energetically is animating the flesh? Well, it's the spirit of what I am. It's that creative force, the source of life itself, love, authority, justice, right? And then it's flesh or beingness as animated death warmed over. After being sacrificed to Moloch and Moloch's machine, and to then, life as a breakfast cereal, Mikey likes it. And Mikey, eating the breakfast cereal, life, right about the age of 8. So what does Mikey on the cereal box represent? Spiritual perfection, innocence. That represents the sacrifice, because the sacrifice has to be a very high level sacrifice. So when you look at this Christ story, why does the Christ story have to involve a being that represents a 100% power level of sacrifice? It's because that's what's required to have power over the power. See, this is a realm within the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, world of death, game of lies. This realm speaks the languages of power and money, right? Well, if I am what I know myself to be, right? And I was that thing even when I didn't know I was that thing. So that's where we get to a concept of power over the power. Is it really possible to come here and to not have access to power? Now, what Moloch's machine teaches is that, yeah, there's power and money accessible if you as an individual serve wickedness and evil and death and destruction. Then yes, you will be rewarded with power and money. But Benton, knowing what he is, says, well, wait a minute. What I am can never be cut off from, in fact, the highest forms of power, and even within a delusion. So to falsely identify with the delusion is to think, okay, I need to go out here and perform so that the delusion grants me power and authority and grants me money and resources. See, which is, what does that do? That is to treat one's blessing as if it were a curse by doing what? By affirming a lack of power, by affirming a lack of abundance, by affirming a lack of anything whatsoever. So if what I am is life itself, is love, is authority, is all of these things, then to that is blessing. So to then perform based on any of the notions of this world of death and game of lies is to in fact play right into the hands of antithesis, who can then through legalese say, well, look at him. We've been keeping records through this computer simulation. We've got the server logs, and we see, and this is the idea of judgment, we see what he served through his performance. And then that gets wrapped into a religion called Christianity, where supposedly a man in the sky, a gray-haired man in the sky, when Benton arrives at the pearly gates, is going to put on his spectacles and start going through the scrolls and see, well, wait a minute, what did old Benton do? Can we let him in or not? That's backwards. That's inverted. What is not alive, what is not representative of life, supreme authority, love, creation, expansion, knowing, never knowing a beginning, therefore never knowing an end, cannot die, right? That thing redeems itself. It is redeemable. Everything that can't be redeemed is dead and remains here. So the idea of a judgment in the biblical sense is backwards, folks. It's backwards. So the judgment or the idea of redemption is by going within. Again, God is love. The kingdom of God or love is where, said Christ? Within you. It's to go within myself inwardly. And what I've learned through personal experience is to go inward for 15 years plus years and to uncover the perfected path that lies within. That's to go inward leads to the individual being greeted as an N word everywhere I go, meaning Benton as nigger. Benton as nigger coolie. So when the angry rooster and then later his cohort showed up to drag Benton off the interstate, he knew he was looking at a white nigger coolie. Now, maybe he didn't understand why, right? Maybe he didn't understand the full implications, but he also knows what he's serving, even if he only knows at a subconscious level what he's serving. And he knows that based on, the graven image upheld before Moloch, he knows he's higher in that pecking order than Benton, because Benton's goal or Benton's performance is to be as low on that pecking order as possible. See, the fact that I'm even still granted access to Federal Reserve notes leads me to believe, well, I don't know, Benton, are you fully walking this perfected path that lies within? Why are 1,700 credits hitting your account every week now? Like, what's going on here? See, because is that God? Is that source? Is that life? Right? Air quote, so-called God doing that? Yeah, it probably is, but is it which God? Is that the chief commander? Is that the prince of the power of the air? Right? Is that the God of this world doing that? This idea of be in the world, not of the world. So it's the confusion of why do I even have access to this money at this point? Right? Because it seems to me like, now maybe there will be a ministry, and maybe this is it. Maybe this is the ministry, right? But then at some point, Christ, as we saw, had some version of a treasurer that held the coin purse. Now, is that somebody who's lower on the pecking order spiritually, who hasn't completely facilitated the resurrection of the risen Christ within yet, right? But who's still serving, right? Serving that force. Meanwhile, Christ in the Bible said, I no longer call you servant, I call you friend. Well, that's Benton, see? Once the risen Christ is resurrected within, there's no more service, see? There's no more, now it doesn't mean Benton can choose to serve, anybody can. Benton bought a homeless man $100 worth of clothing, had it delivered from Walmart, to the truck stop parking lot. Anybody can do that. A servant of wickedness can do that. Do you think the enemy cares? Do you think Satan cares? As long as the tree's rotten, why would Satan give a fuck? Oh, well, look, he bought a homeless man $100 worth of clothes, see? Who cares? And so that's this idea of works, the Christian concept of works. Doesn't mean anything. Now, it means something to the homeless guy who, may or may not have gotten out of his mental, the mental ward of the local hospital in Lubbock, Texas, where they discharge him in scrubs, and here's your tennis shoes from the clothes closet, and probably they offered him a clothes closet, and I could tell from talking to this fella that he's particular about his clothing. So he, surprise, surprise, the spirit of what I am, because probably he's in the motherfucking mental hospital because he's probably a little too closely identified with what he is. See, he's probably, again, the philosophy of solipsism has to be in play, right? But if this gentleman is what I am, well, okay, why wouldn't that spirit say, okay, well, the guy's left the mental hospital, now he's at a truck stop. Well, hey, we got old Benton coming by. We'll just have old Benton stop in, and Benton will make sure that Benton notices him. So I noticed a few little things happened to where I just probably otherwise wouldn't have driven all the way around to that corner of the lot. Oh, well, look, here's a local homeless, maybe, I didn't know, a local homeless person, whatever, better go see if he's okay, right? And that's what I did. I said, just walked over, hey, man, just checking in, see if you're all right, if you need anything, So maybe that's why Benton is being given the fiat, not to pass it out to people, but to have access to it for some version of ministry, right? And, who knows? And again, it's not Benton's business to then attach himself to, well, and then I need to keep up with this person and be able to say, well, look at who I helped. And then now he fit into the status quo social contract conformity to peer groups. And then now Moloch's machine can sign off on him, right? And say, oh, look, he's been rehabilitated and now he's working for some corporation. And look, he's got a house and a wife and children and all, and he's been blessed. That's not a blessing. That's a curse, folks. And I don't mean the wife and the children. That can be a blessing. That can be a curse. Clearly, I'm saying that to frame it in the context of the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, that's only ever going to it's only ever going to manifest as a curse from the concept of, oh, look, society's found him in the gutter, metaphorically, and picked him up, cleaned him up, dusted him off. My thing is, what can I provide that will maybe plant a seed in this individual where maybe he will figure out what's within him and to begin to put shovel into the dirt, metaphorically, within himself to eventually perhaps uncover the perfected path that may very well lie within, which, bringing us back to Mikey Likes It in Life cereal, it's the representation of that perfected path. So if you look at Mikey on the cereal box at about the age of 8, and again, 8 is what? Infinity. And there's Mikey with Mikey Likes It from the commercial, and that's death. But we'll call it life because this is inverted. So we'll call death life. And of course, antithesis looks at authority and creation and expansion and justice. Antithesis has no choice but to invert all of that and operate based on the lack of love, the lack of tolerance, the lack of justice, the lack of expansion, while mimicking expansion. So now we get into economy, we get into money, right? Now we get into the economy has to always expand. Why? Because it's mimicking the never-ending expansion of thesis, or what I am, or source, or life itself, or creation. See? And it does this by subverting the ever-expanding creative force that may very well lie within each individual, but to even say individual is to affirm delusion, because there is no dividing an indivisible force, because just like Christ said, if hate drives out hate, Satan's kingdom is divided against itself. How can it stand? Well, same thing when it comes to the most super intelligent power, source, and force of love and creation, expansion, authority, and justice. It can't be possible to break off a little chunk to individuate that and then to have it enter into this place. It's only seemingly possible based on waking dreams, surrealistic unreality, imagination, subversion of creative force into creating this place. What I am is creating this place on the fly on an ongoing basis based on the delusion and the illusion of time, space, location, place. That's what this is. And that's a slow process of what seems to be death. Meanwhile, the being can't ever experience death, but it can imagine death. The being can't ever experience death. It can imagine death. The being can't ever experience death, but it can imagine death. And so now everything that is dead within me, just by Benton affirming that, is starting to go, wait a minute, are we in the wrong place? Because I've almost felt, yet another exorcism of another, entity or a grossly stagnated energy that is healing, healing by the power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus, right? Deliverance by the power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus. Restoration by the power in the name of the Lord Christ Jesus. It's not a religion. It's not a book. It's not a building, right? The building and the church discredits itself because it doesn't pay taxes and tells you to pay taxes. How? It can't be valid. It's divided against itself. It's divided against itself. If it was what it claims to be, it would either tell you not to pay your taxes or it would pay its taxes. How is it not paying taxes while telling you to pay taxes? That's a division, see? Oh, well, the Bible doesn't contradict itself. Well, maybe it doesn't. The church does. Every 501(c) church contradicts itself. Now, I've got my own opinion about the contradictions in the Bible, and I know what I know about the Bible. The church absolutely contradicts itself on just right there. It doesn't pay taxes. And it's a corporation. It's affirming death. It's loving death. And why couldn't Benton, in order to keep working a job that he liked, why did Benton find it spiritually impossible to form a corporation in order to continue to work for Rain Dogs Trucking under a 1099? Because they weren't willing to employ me under my Social Security number. I almost just said the Social Security number. Does it even matter at this point? But who cares? But yeah. And I couldn't explain why, but I was unable to form a LLC or an S Corp or whatever. Can't do it. So when I got this, the reason why I took this job is, the first question I asked is, will you pay me on a 1099 on my Social Security number? And they even wanted to get into why. And I was just basically like, just because that's what I want. What do you mean, why? You're going to try to talk me out of it? Why? What do you mean, why? And, what's left unsaid is, if I want to go to fucking federal prison potentially for tax evasion, ain't that my business? But do you really think that this delusion is going to cast the spirit of what I am into a dungeon when it can't even do that in the first place? Oh, let's put his dead flesh in a dead dungeon somewhere. Hey, seize his dead flesh and put it in the dead dungeon down there. Oh, why? So it can sit cross-legged and fucking vibrate up out of here? Right? Mission accomplished. Beam me up, Scotty. Right? You want to tell me that those monks sat cross-legged and right before they, they drenched themselves with gasoline, and right before they lit the match, they fucking vibrated up out of here? Well, if they can do it, I can do it. Fucking put me in the... You think I don't know how to behave in a way in a federal prison to end up in the hole? Oh, Benton's known for years he needs to meditate. I'm sorry, fast. And I've done some fasting. In fact, I've done way more fasting than most people. And I don't mean intermittent fasting, I mean actual fasting. I don't know, man, if I'm ever going to ascend to the heavenlies, and that's a metaphor, I don't mean literally. I don't know, man. Maybe they'll put me in the hole in the federal prison, and maybe I won't like the trays, right? Or maybe I'll eat just enough of what passes for bread every 3 days to keep my fucking digestion going, and then next thing you know, they'll think I'm on a hunger strike or whatever. I'll be back to 100 pounds. Motherfucker, I've already weighed 100 pounds. That was called 3 years ago, buddy. How am I going to be scared? How am I going to be scared of weighing 100 pounds? Right? That was 3 years ago, buddy, when the dead flesh almost died. It's dead anyway. What's the fucking difference? See? It's dead anyway. So I'm almost certain that when I look this vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions in the face and say, yeah, I didn't pay them taxes and I'm not going to pay them. Because all they're going to do is show up and say, hey, buddy, you want to get on the payment plan? Meaning, this is a never-ending series of offers. Now it's here, now it's gone, now it's here, now it's gone. And we haven't covered this in a while. This realm is a never-ending series of offers. Would you like to curse your blessing? Would you like to treat your blessing as if it were a curse? Hey, sir, we recognize that you haven't been paying these taxes. here's your chance. Wouldn't you like to get on this payment plan? You wouldn't. Well, surely, sir, you understand what could result. Yeah. You're going to seize my dead flesh, Son of Man style, and cast me into prison? Meanwhile, Saul of Tarsus, a.k.a. the Apostle Paul, apparently founded the entire Christian religion, the so-called Gospel of Paul. There's not supposed to be a Gospel of Paul. The so-called Gospel of Paul. By what? Writing letters to churches while he was imprisoned or supposedly persecuted for his service to Christ? Ha ha ha. I don't expect in any way to be in prison for this. Meanwhile, as we see in the news cycle, this system of things will seize the dead flesh of anybody at any time and detain them for any purpose it chooses whatsoever. And as we know, and I know this from listening to Alex Jones' radio show for many years, whatever they're doing to the brown people and the foreigners, whether or not that's actually happening, they're going to do it to the white folks, the regular old white folks, and the regular old black folks. They're going to do it to us. Of course they are. So years ago, I figured out that my behavior, and because that's fear. See, fear is dead. Fear is to love death, is to say, well, if I don't mind my P's and Q's out here, then they're going to put me in a dungeon, right? Or they're going to seize me on the street and say, are you a U.S. citizen, or are you this, or are you that? And eventually it's going to be basically like, where's the mark, or whatever they want, if you don't do the thing we're demanding, then we're going to put you in prison. That can happen at any time. It has nothing to do with my behavior. See, nothing. So yeah, when the government shows up and says, hey, what about these taxes? What about them? Oh, well, yeah, but aren't you a Christian? Render unto Caesar. Actually, that means let the dead bury the dead, buddy. You want the dead flesh? Okay, here's what I have in exchange for the taxes you say I owe. The dead flesh. Render unto Caesar, motherfucker. You want a portion of this? You want a portion of the credits that hit my account? These death notes? Here. Take the dead flesh. That's the Christ story. Put it on a fucking crucifix. Right? Whether literal or metaphorical or both. Put it on a cross, right? Pierce its side, break its leg, pierce its side, right? Entomb it. Maybe the spirit will travel the underworld. I don't know. Maybe this is the underworld. I don't fucking know. But as long as the Christ following the 4-minute mile that the Lord Christ Jesus ran, as long as Benton has already ran the 4-minute mile called what? The resurrection of the risen Christ within me, there can't be fear, because that's to walk the perfected path that lies within. What I am will never know fear. So yeah, here, take it, Caesar. Render unto Caesar, buddy. This is dead anyway. Take it. You're welcome to it, partner. Do with it as you will, buddy. So what's there to fear? You tell me. What is there to fear? And do you really think these jackbooted oppressor thugs can stand up before the force of what I am? Surrender. Maybe I'll go sit cross-legged in meditation, fasting. Maybe I'll just go sit out as close as they'll let me get to the federal prison, or maybe one of these migrant detention facilities, and they'll be like, "Hey, man, what are you doing out here?" I said, "Well, I've eventually y'all are going to put me in here, so I figured I'd just show up, wait around. What else is there to do in a vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, a world of death and a game of lies? I mean, really, what else is there to do? Might as well hang out here until y'all put me in there. What's the difference? And it's to offer up the dead flesh. Render unto Caesar, let the dead bury the dead. And so any identification whatsoever with Benton doing business as a truck driver, oh, a truck to live in, yippee skippy, yay for Benton, that's a preference. Yeah, great, a truck to live in. Oh, look, fucking motherfucking dead Federal Reserve notes. Great, fantastic. Who cares, right? Who cares? And I've already lived that life. I chose to live that life of living in the streets with almost nothing. Ain't that hard, guys? It's really not. Now, I'm not submitting that to people as something to live or to aspire to. I'm saying, and it's not even livable anyway. It's a slow process of death, right? But once the being attains these levels of understanding, I mean, mission accomplished. Beam me up, Scotty. Can I pretty please with sugar on top? Get the fuck up out of here. Well, apparently not, right? Apparently there's, Now we get into internal meaning, because if there's no possibility for external meaning, whom or what is served by Benton continuing to remain here? It's like, I don't know, maybe whatever that force is. And it's this idea of a so-called air quotes God as a shot caller, right? It's a gang member. It's a gang leader. This idea that there's a man in the sky who's like, giving me a discrete purpose, but then won't bother to tell me what it is. It's like, all right, man, how's the fucking King of Kings and the head of all these armies? Well, I don't know, man. In a military structure, isn't each fucking soldier and commander and captain or whatever? If this is 5-star Benton is 5-star general, well, why isn't the commander of the fucking army giving me explicit instructions on what to be done? See? Well, because it's in here, and what I am is the commander of the armies, the King of Kings. What I am inside of here. See? And it knows what to do. It knows what to do intuitively at the right time, right? Which is probably, in the short run, to keep driving a truck and living in a truck and working on the internal space until the system says, okay, no more truck driving. And that seems to be, who knows? But right now, paid 257 of these to sit around and talk to you folks, right? I mean, what is this even real, man? Well, no, it's not, because it's never real. Because waking dreams surrealistic, unreality is always there. Deja vu all over again. It's never not there. It's always there. See, but yeah, I like money. The dead flesh likes money. What I am is not capable of even considering this, right? It's like, okay, great, money. No, the dead flesh likes money. Of course it does. How could it not? Because this is death. This is death. Slow process of death. Of course. See you in the woods. Yeah, it's funny. It's funny. Anyway, I guess that's enough of the sermon, Sunday sermon. Right? Now tell me again I ain't a preacher. Y'all ain't never gonna hear a sermon preached like that. Never ever. It's the only place you can hear that. Yep. Anyway, quick break. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. Thank you, Mindful Exposures. All right, Angry Rooster loves it. Well, I'm glad you're glad, right? I'm glad you're glad. Might as well use the electrics while they still work, because they're not going to work in a few days, or maybe less than that. At some point, the truck decides that the battery's too low and it still wants to be able to potentially start the engine, and it'll just shut it. It'll just shut most of this, calls it convenience features or whatever. It'll shut most of this stuff off. But I got to say, I don't recommend a lot of things, but this cold brew, this shit is fire. Partner. This is a New Orleans style, meaning filtered water, coffee, and chicory. Yeah. You see that's the New Orleans style symbol there. The steam coming out of the cup. Because you can heat this up if you want to. And then some people may not know, cold brew, less acid, but also it's stronger at the level of caffeine. Proper cold brew actually has more caffeine. I used to make my own, but caffeine addiction has returned to some extent. But why not, man? Why shouldn't I enjoy myself, right? Oh, we got more chocolate too. Almost forgot the last of the chocolate. The last of the chocolate. Let's do that. Actually, this doesn't need to be in here. This needs to be in here. Yes. Because we're going to make more eggs, I think. Eat some chocolate, make some eggs, and get out of here, probably. Because I'm going to go see, maybe I can cajole somebody into carrying me to the super center and back for some, in exchange for some Federal Reserve notes. What? Dog shitting. Espresso. There you go. Mindful exposures. Benton's a cat person, of course. Of course he is. That's all right. It's going to have to be. Oh, yeah. Chocolate. No sugar. No sweetener. Oh, yeah. I figured you did. I figured you did. Yeah, a lot of people have both, right? Cats and dogs. Yeah. There you go. Yeah, 40 and single. Well, I'm 50, but I think you meant you, not me, right? Well, I mean, look. I mean, love and romance are dead. Not that they ever existed in the first place, but I mean, I think we all see the blooms off that rose, right? By now. Yep. The blooms off that rose. No thanks. But, you know, women that like men and men that like women, it's okay. We might like spending a little time around each other at times, but it's the whole commingling that becomes the issue, right? So, from my perspective, there's a lot of lovely ladies out there, but you know, I get just as much about, you know, maybe a short interaction or a short back and forth, or just sort of a, you know, like, you know, a gentleman and a lady kind of thing. I get just as much out of that as anything else. Why intertwine the lives, or even, you know, the bedroom fun aspects? Like, what's the point? What's the point? Pleasures of the flesh, right? Been there, done that. I'm retired. And a woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle. That's absolutely true. Always has been. But they want a man. A lot of them want a man. That's even worse. And if it was just there's been times, and you know, there's times and there's contexts where a woman does need a man, but and vice versa. But you know, not in this society. There's a woman. What does a woman need a man for? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Useless. Honestly. You know. Now, when you get to the lower socioeconomic, you know, the less a person has money-wise, it's like, yeah. But then there's not that many men, and I've never been this guy, but there's not very many men who could just, you know, build the house, fix the car, you know, do whatever needs to be done, you know. Now, probably I would be more of the type who could have friends or know people that could help me, but I can do some of that stuff, but not really some of it. But I'm 50, you know, you're looking at, as a woman, well, I mean, what kind of, to me, if a woman wants something to do with a 50-year-old, that's already a problem. It's like, why, what? Why aren't you looking at me? I'm 50, right? What is this? Where's the appeal? You know? What's in it for her? Exactly, what's in it for her? Same thing with me. What's in it for me? You know? In this fucking hellscape. Jack of all trades. Yeah, well, you're probably not attractive. I hate to break it to you. And see, this is what women won't tell men, right? Is if you can do a whole bunch of stuff, that's still not attractive, buddy. She still would prefer the attractive man who can't do none of that. It's just how it is. I don't know why. Now, she would still be more attracted to an attractive guy, right? If he's out there, if the car breaks down and next thing you know, he's got the hood popped and he's fixing the fucking car. Well, yeah, now she's more attracted, potentially. But make no mistake, the vast majority of all males are not attracted to them. I'm talking like 80%. And so statistically, it's highly likely, Angry Rooster, I hate to break it to you, you're probably in the 80%. Benton somehow just barely clawed his way into the 20%. I don't know what happened. Believe me, it's nothing I did. But it's been that way my whole life. So, therefore, I've always had women in my life. Meanwhile, at a certain point, society changed, and then surprise, surprise, women stopped volunteering to be in a relationship with me, but they haven't stopped showing their signs that, well, yeah, you are attractive, Ben. It's like, well, you know, whatever, but that's fine. That's genetics, you know. And some of that can be learned, you know, some of the body language and some of the things can be learned to trigger attraction in a woman. But for most guys, there's nothing you can do. They don't find you attractive. They never have. They never will. Sorry. Sorry about your luck. It's just how it is. So you can learn how to do all the stuff you want to learn how to do. And that just means that women might be willing to have you in their life to extract resources from you. While Chad comes in through the back door when you ain't around and knocks it out the box and then leaves, right? I mean, that's just what it is. And you can label it and you can say, oh, well, that's horrible. I can't believe you would do the exact same thing if you were her, buddy. You'd do the exact same thing if you were her. Yes, you would. When old Chad comes around sniffing around, you'd do the exact same damn thing if you were her. Yeah, you would. And I'm not Chad. I'm Chad Light. Right. I'm Chad Light. But yeah, it's, believe me, every once in a while I'm like, yo, look, there's Chad. Goodness gracious. You know, I see what they mean when they say Giga Chad. Good God. Is that even real? You know, goodness gracious. Almost like a different species. You expect women to say no to that? I'm just like, I'm not wanting it, but I'm just looking at it like, almost like an artifact in a museum, right? So, good God, what is that? Is that even human? Oh, so now a woman's going to say no to that. Yeah, sure. Sure she's not. Are you crazy? Are you crazy? But, oh, well, I can do this, that, and the other. That's great. She's not attracted to you. So what? Deal with it. Oh, look, Benton just barely manages to be somewhat attractive to some of these broads. Yippee, skippy, yay for Benton. Who cares? I mean, really. Who cares? Meanwhile, I'm 50 and they're going to call me an incel anyway. It's like, well, I don't know that not by technical definition, but I mean, whatever y'all want to say. That's what y'all say, right? That's what y'all say. Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know about the playing stupid side of things, but it's, a woman can't choose what's attractive, right? Because what's the attraction? The attraction is her dead flesh biology is attempting to make a specific type of son, not a daughter. Her body's trying to create a male offspring that will spread her genetics the farthest, right? And just by virtue of when I've had an attractive wife or girlfriend, just that fact alone will cause other women to become attracted to me. So that whole movie where the one guy, he pays the one attractive chick to pretend to be his girlfriend, like that shit really does work on some level, as long as he can behave himself enough, or with somebody like me, it's if they meet me by themselves, they're attracted, but then they're like, well, this could be a serial killer. Because see, men don't think this way, because men have no concept of how women think. For all she knows, here's Ted Bundy, and yeah, on some level, Ted Bundy, women found him attractive on some level, and then, but they need some kind of sign that, this is not an actual, traveling serial killer fucking murderer, right? I mean, for real. So it's like, oh, well, here he is with a attractive woman who's choosing to be around him, and he hasn't killed her yet. So, like, now she likes her chances, right? They really think this way. I know that sounds insane, fellas, but that's really how they think. And who can blame them, right? Because some of them do get murdered by serial killers who they find attractive, right? And then we get into the whole dark triad of personality traits and all the Machiavellianism and all that stuff. Meanwhile, have you ever watched a soap opera with your romantic partner, Angry Rooster? I like soap operas, but I was free to like soap operas because I only ever watched them because that's what my woman was watching, right? And every soap opera revolves around a strong male character who manages all the broads, and he's like, powerful in the community and all of this, and they're not dating him or whatever, but they all kind of like have their own relationship with him, and they're playing off of him, right? And that's part of the way I learned some of these dynamics is by watching motherfucking soap operas. And people are like, oh, it's a TV show, who cares? Yeah, it's based on life, it's based on things in the psyche, right? And I learned a lot about women and that in other ways, right? By paying fucking attention, instead of expecting them to be some type of way that they're never going to be. Meanwhile, the moment she knows you expect her to be some type of way that she knows she's never going to be, oh, well, she'll just pretend to be that to get what she needs. And then men are mad at her. Why? Because some stupid man let her do that? That's his fault. How's that her fault? Maybe if he wasn't so stupid, then maybe he wouldn't do that. And then they watch the exact same guy do the same thing again. So like this Angry Rooster guy that came and had me towed off of the interstate, how many times? Was once enough? How many times did he let a woman, blow a bunch of smoke up his ass and appeal to his vanity and, treat him like a shit don't stink just long enough to get him to go build a life for the both of them so that she could take the money and run, Some guys do that repeatedly, especially guys who are really good at going broke and then, somehow acquiring yet another fortune. It's just build it up, she takes it away, build it up, she takes it away, build it up, she takes it. You think by about the fourth time, they would have a pretty good idea of what was about to happen. So from a female perspective, I don't know, it must be what he wants. Why does he keep coming back to it? Wouldn't the way to prove that that's not what he wants be to break the motherfucking cycle? Guess what? Guess who never, ever built up any wealth or money whatsoever? So I cleverly solved those problems by never having anything for her to take in the first place. Isn't that amazing? Yeah, she can't take my shit when I don't own anything, right? She drives away in one of the two, jalopies, and I drive away in the other one, right? I mean, what are we talking about here? There's nothing to divide up. But the thrill is gone. Admitted breadwinner simp. Yeah, simp magnetism. There you go. Well, but we know what that is, right? Mindful exposure. I mean, the men don't know it. It's the illusion of safety and security, which, while not sexually attractive, right? That doesn't that doesn't ring the bell, right? That doesn't ring the bell. But that's attractive in another way. And I'm not trying to speak for women. I'm just going based on what I understand. It's also an actual man with actual testosterone doesn't understand the woman's strong desire for safety and security, right? We don't understand it. Now, these males and the ones that are more, as males that are increasingly more, and it's not feminine, as males increasingly lack masculinity, right? It becomes a different thing. But to an actual man with testosterone, we can even maybe figure out that they like safety and security, but it's still difficult to realize, she's actually not attracted to she may not be attracted to this particular man, and meanwhile, what is status quo, social contract, peer groups have historically said that in order for her to define herself in relation to the vacuous, delusory, adversarial realm of business transactions, she needs to find a husband and get married, right? That's been the societal expectation up until a few generations ago. Let's not forget that either. So in some ways, it's almost forced to pick a bozo anyway. So if she's forced to pick a bozo, maybe we can find a man with testosterone who's probably going to be a womanizer, may or may not be physically violent towards her, and some version of an alcoholic who, yes, maybe he can climb a corporate ladder, maybe he can be temporarily successful in business, but how many of those guys can also not fucking go around womanizing, not that many, right? And the so-called simp, which I'm not a fan of that term, but those guys will never relate to the fact, they can't relate to, sometimes a woman just shows up and basically presents herself and is like, here, have me, right? And I'm like, okay, I guess so. I mean, what else am I doing? And when I was 28 or 33 or whatever, the hormones were such that it was, who's going to say no to that, right? Who's going to say no to whatever crazy broad presents herself, Well, simp can't relate to that. It's never happened. It's never happened to him, And to me, it's not even a big deal. It's just like, yeah, of course. She's trying to get something. She's trying to get something. Why is that a bad thing? Isn't everybody, it's every man for himself, right? Isn't it every man or woman for themselves at some level? Like, now we're going to hate on the broads for being what they are, And then especially Christians talking about, creation and, human nature and all of this. Well, yeah, I don't know why from a Christian perspective, I don't know why God made them that way, but he did. If that's what a Christian believes, better accept it. You're going to try to turn it into something that you might prefer? Well, where's that in the Bible? That doesn't seem appropriate. Where's the appropriateness in that? I don't see it. And yeah, I've had my own issues with women in my younger days, but I'd say overall, I've been able to pretty much accept them for who they are more often than not. And then getting into my middle age, I really figured it the fuck out and was like, hey, this is how they are. And, this is normal, and as long as I'm not disrespected, who cares? And meanwhile, if your woman is at the goddamn corner store and some Chad with some gutter criminal Chad with a mouth game fucking gets her panties wet at the corner store, don't you want her to come home and tell you about it? Like, I'd rather know than not know. But then, am I going to be secure enough in my own masculinity to listen to the story and to see the look on her face and be like, wow, yeah, he really, dude's really got some game, And my last woman was flirty. It's like, well, how am I going to choose to be in a 10-year relationship with a flirty, charming broad who's easy to hit on and likes to get hit on? Right? That's what men do. Is they meet a flirty broad who's charming and attractive and easy to hit on, and who likes them, and then gets angry and jealous and tries to change her and tries to shame her for being who she is. Are you crazy? You're the dumbo that decided to enter into a relationship with a charming, flirty, easy to hit on chick. Are you crazy? Why? Why would you do that, sir? You better be able to handle it. Now, when the guy, when his inadequacy is he knows he can't take care of his business in the bedroom, and I don't want to get into details. I did that recently, and that ended up being a violation. But, when the guy knows that he can't live up to what he needs to live up to in the bedroom, well, now he is threatened. Now he is, But wait a minute. Does not the fella have control over that? Couldn't he do a little better? We have the internet. I mean, there's probably material out there, sir. Probably somebody could say, hey, man, here's how you do it. Here's what you do. A little bit of breath work. I'm not going to go into it, but there's things that can be done, sir. How about we up our game a little bit? Right? But to even face the reality, for a man to face the reality that he could be inadequate, right? So really, that's what we're talking about when it comes to Chad and Chad Light. It's just, 9 times out of 10, Chad and Chad Light their performance is never lacking, right? So, of course, they're not, why would they, they're not going to feel inadequate. Now, maybe in other ways, but not in that way. And that's really what a simp is somebody, here's a simp. Yes or no, can he give her an orgasm with his penis? More or less every time. That's it. If the answer is no, then he's a simp. That's it. That's the whole thing, guys. But nobody will just come out and say that because the gurus can't earn a living from correcting that. Okay? They can earn a living by blaming the women, right? By sort of, there, it's okay, buddy. It's just the women are horrible and society's fucked and it's not your fault. Lies, right? Lie to them. And then teach them a bunch of dominant body language nonsense, which is not nonsense, but, teach them a bunch of things. Meanwhile, at some point, she's going to figure out, wait a minute. Chad came around last night and reminded her of what she's lacking in her relationship, right? And that's not her fault, fellas. That is not her fault. How is she to blame for that? When her dead flesh meat suit is configured to respond whether she wants it to respond. And see, this is where men get fucked themselves up, is they think, oh, well, she could just choose not to. No, she can't. She has no control over what her motherfucking body responds to. None. She can't control that. And that's why in the olden days there was all this slut shaming. Well, that's not a thing anymore. We don't really have that anymore. But that's why that used to be a thing, because women have no choice but to compete for Chad. It's not up to them. They can't do anything about it. They have to. Now, they can hide it. They can pretend not to. They can, because most men are oblivious and can't read the subtle signals, right? Because most men are oblivious and can't read the subtle signals. thus lying to themselves. And I'll just, later on, I'll just be like, buddy, what was your gut telling you? Like, did you not have a gut instinct? I understand that you can't fucking read body language and you can't read these signs, but it's like, what did your gut tell you? And he'll just be like, yeah, she was cheating on me. Exactly, motherfucker. You knew it the whole time. Why stick around and torture you and her? Right? Oh, you're going to get your pound of flesh out of her by what? Doing what my second wife did when her husband apparently put a fucking tape recorder in her car or whatever. I mean, is this what we're going to come to? I don't have time for that. My life, and now I'm not saying I never engaged in some version of that, maybe, but not that. That's crazy, but that's just insane on every level. But information gathering is a thing at times, but why did he feel the need to put the tape recorder in there in the first place? His gut knew that he wasn't ringing her bell anymore. Maybe he used to, and now he's not. And yeah, here comes some other fella. That's just how that works, man. Why? It's not her fault. But then, see, society has said, well, Ozzie and Harriet, Leave It to Beaver, the nuclear family, right? A woman for every man. Yeah, an unhappy, unfulfilled housewife. Great. Sounds like a great society, right? Raising some simp's kids, and then maybe, maybe she can sneak a Chad. Maybe she can sneak one out of the three. Maybe she can have one of them could be Chad's kid, right? I don't know. And I look so much like my dad, it's just almost comical. Like if we go somewhere together, people are just like making jokes about how much we look alike, right? And I told ex-wife number 2 because she wanted to get knocked up, and I was pretty sure it wasn't ever going to happen. But my thing to her was that I said, I hope you understand, if you get pregnant, you're taking a paternity test. I don't care if you want to or not. I don't give a fuck. I'm not raising no other man's kid. It's just, it is what it is. Oh my God, you blah, blah. I don't give a fuck. No, absolutely not. And half this child abuse stuff is because you got inadequate males trying to cohabitate with single moms, and they don't even realize that there's something in them, right, that hates this other man's kid. And then now you get into a lot of these women, they hate that son because they can't stand the father anymore, right? And now that's where half the child abuse comes from. It's fucking sick, man. Sick, sad world. And until people understand these dynamics, I mean, they're just only ever going to fall victim to them repeatedly. It's just how it works, man. It's just what it is. Oh, wait a minute. I got to do this. Yep. Apologies. I need this cup. Excuse me. Pardon me, excuse me, how rude. I mean, look at all this stuff I know. This proves we're not free. If we were free, people would just be like, yeah, Benton knows a lot of cool shit. He's fun to talk to or listen to in some way. But because he won't conform to society, we can't ever sign off on him. This should just be my job, is to talk about shit. I mean, really, I should just be able to just talk and then have money. Why not? Or at least have access to resources. Oh, but no, You can't. It has to be in service of Moloch's machine. It's got to be status quo, social contract, conformity to peer groups, because we ain't free. If people were free, well, there wouldn't be a hellscape, but if people were free within themselves, and then, of course, free externally, then I could just be what I am and everything would be fucking copacetic. But that ain't possible. Because within everything I just preached the sermon about, it's got to all be ran through that fucking bullshit gauntlet of death, valley of the shadow of death. See, so Benton will always be treated like the white nigger coolie, and he will always be treated like, well, okay, Benton, if you would just do this, that, and the other, then you could figure out a way to leverage everything you seem to know. Right? Because it has no value until I go out into this world of death and game of lies. No man is, well, every man is an island of style, dog eat dog, every man for himself, and turn it into a business. Well, now I'm not interested in that. If I was interested in business, instead of learning all of these things that I'm talking to you about, I would have just learned how to make money. Right? That's a completely different skill set. Why would I have bothered to learn all of these things that I'm telling you folks about when I could just take that same energy and learn how to make money? Like, it doesn't make sense. Why would I have learned all of this and then, okay, we'll turn all of that into a business? Well, that sounds fucking stupid. Wouldn't the thing to have been done is to go back 20 years ago or 30 years ago as I began the process of learning and gathering all of this information? Wouldn't that have just been the time to say, okay, well, I'll devote the same energy to learning about business? Yeah, but I'm not that interested in business, although I do know more than the average person about business, which is not saying much. Oh, you know more than the average person about business. Okay. That means almost nothing. That's not a high bar to cross. It's not a high bar to clear. Right. Not a high hurdle. We can get over that one pretty easily. But it's true, though. I mean, you know, it's true. Yeah. Yeah, if a guy takes longer to get ready. Well, and that's what we have now, mindful exposures. We got a bunch of guys, and you know, they called it metrosexual back in my day, since I'm Gen X. And you're probably about, you know, not as old as me, but you probably know what I'm talking about. But yeah, you know, I'm showing up with, these days I've got dirty fucking fingernails. I mean, I'm not even saying that that's good or bad. I'm just mean, you know, yeah, I've been into my appearance at some point in the past, but not to that degree. Yeah, it gets a little crazy, but I mean, if that's what those guys really like, I mean, I'm not going to hate on them, but yeah, that becomes a thing. Even the gym thing, you know, I did the gym thing, and even that, definitely some women interpret that as, you know, like what's with building all this muscle, you know, what's this guy doing? You know, but then, you know, it's overall a positive thing, but then, you know, I see society is now, you know, males are now seeing that as just kind of the price of admission, where they have to be gym bros and they have to fucking try to have abs. I've never had abs in my whole life. I never will, but, you know, I lifted weights because I liked lifting weights. And then the competitive thing of I just kind of wanted to see how big I could get. Well, it was pretty fucking big, actually, for how thin I am now and how thin I was when I started. Although I was obese when I started, actually. But either way. The digestive system is really not designed to eat all that food anyway. And then, of course, now you got women are on steroids. What do you think about that, mindful exposures? Forget about men on steroids. Women are on steroids. What do you think about that? Any thoughts on women taking steroids? And obviously not even, you know, there's a percentage, but it's become common. It's become commonplace for women to take steroids. And it's become common for younger males to take steroids. Whereas actually, if you look at the history of bodybuilding and the history of steroids, that's typically been males who, you know, started lifting weights at a young age and then had the genetics to put on a decent amount of muscle mass, and then later on got into it as a sport and then started taking steroids. And then at some point it turned into guys who, you know, had something wrong with them, something was wrong with their psychology, and they, body dysmorphia or whatever, and they wanted to get bigger. And then it's also been a homosexual thing. Let's not forget that. To fetishize, a guy with big muscles. That's not women doing that, fellas. Now, the fact is, what men don't like is the fact that a guy will be talking to a woman, and then they'll see a muscle man, and she'll make a face and go, ooh, gross. But the fact is, 100% of the time, if you take two identical males and she's attracted to the male. So if you find any male that she's attracted to, if you make an identical copycat version, except the copycat version has more muscle mass, she will prefer the version with more muscle mass 100% of the time, folks. 100% of the time. But so what men don't understand is they don't realize that there's a whole bunch of guys with muscles that she ain't attracted to. Because there's a whole bunch of guys with muscles who women don't find attractive. Because if a man could just build a bunch of muscle and be attracted to women, there wouldn't be a guy that didn't have muscles. Or there would be, and those would be the guys who are just naturally attractive to women. Women were attracted to me when I was obese. They were attracted to me when I was 130 pounds. Some of them were attracted to me when I was 110 pounds, and didn't have any color in my face, It is what it is, but, and not a lot, and that's kind of a weird thing, That's a weird thing, but the point I'm making is, if you take a guy that she finds attractive and then you make a copycat version who has 20 more pounds of muscle, she's absolutely more attracted and prefers the one with 20 more pounds. She may not know that. She may not tell you that. I promise you it's true. I promise you it's true. But if a guy is not attractive to her, he can put on all the muscle mass in the world and it will not make a damn bit of difference. So that's what she means when she scrunches her face up and goes, ooh, gross. She's not attracted to him. And she's thinking about what's wrong with him, that he's upset. She's thinking about him measuring out his meals, and she's thinking about him, in a Speedo, on a stage shaving his legs or whatever. Like, that's what she's thinking of. For real. And she's not attracted to him. Right? But then you take like a Jay Cutler, who became wealthy and famous from bodybuilding. My favorite bodybuilder, by the way, Jay Cutler, and a Leo, surprise, surprise. But then if the guy she's attracted to also, prefers to eat chicken and rice, even though he's a retired bodybuilder, and he says to this day that's what he likes to eat is chicken and rice. He says, I go to the Cheesecake Factory and order chicken and rice. He said, they will make you chicken and rice. She doesn't care because it's who he is, right? And it's part of the reason he was at 19 years old, before he knew what a steroid was, he was jacked to the moon. That's just who he is as a person, It's congruent with who he is. You see what I'm saying? Just like I had a friend when I was, trying to date, and after my first divorce and all of this, I had a real good friend who women also found attractive, and he played video games. And this was years ago when an adult male playing video games was still seen as like weird and a taboo. And because it was just who he was, nobody thought it was strange when she came over to his house and there he is playing his fucking console. It's just what he did, right? She didn't think anything of it. But then, now society considers video games are cool, so some guy's going to go, that doesn't really like video games, is going to go play video games to kind of just, maybe meet some gamer chick. It doesn't work. You see what I'm saying? It's about who he is as a person. If I'm a person who actually wants to weigh out all my meals and do all of this weirdo OCD shit, some woman's going to be okay with that. A lot of them are going to take one look at it and think, I don't want to be around somebody who weighs his fucking food. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. And I used to do that, and now I look back on it and go, that was crazy. Something was wrong with my brain, right? At least Jay Cutler made his career out of it. Meanwhile, do you think he measures out his proportions? No, he knows. He can eyeball, he can look at the chicken and the rice on his plate, and he can probably tell you within 10% how many grams of protein and how many grams of carbs that is. Within, I bet, 5 to 10% margin of error. He knows how many calories he's looking at. He knows how many grams of protein and how many grams of carbs. And that's really all it comes down to, is being able to do that. And like me, I know, I can tell you fairly close to what's in this drink, you know. This is about 28 grams of fat. It's about, I think, I don't know, it's about half that in saturated fat. This is about 10 grams of protein, right? It has certain nutrients in it that I can name, right? This is not complicated, folks. But so for a male, can the male understand life from her perspective? And that is empathy, by the way. That is empathy, is to be able to see something from my perspective and then also to see it from somebody else's perspective. That is empathy. And it's discrete or different from sympathy or pity. Sympathy doesn't help anybody. Pity doesn't help anybody. But when I can view things from somebody else's perspective and empathize with them, now we have something to work with interpersonally. And anybody can learn all of this. This is what's awesome is, yeah, I understand a lot of what I preach on here with the sermon and the spiritual stuff. It's a bridge too far for most folks. And even if it's not, you're talking, I'm on 15 plus years of this stuff. If I'm talking about interpersonal and psychology, anybody can learn this in a short period of time. It's really not that complicated. And a lot of it is just pay attention to what's happening, remove the emotion from it, which is a spiritual practice, remove the emotion and just analyze what the fuck happened here, you know? Stop being hurt by it and say, well, wait a minute, she clearly had a reason for why she did these things. But what men want to do is go ask her. No, don't ask her. You're accessing her logic. She did what she did because she felt it. She didn't do what she did because she thought it. Are you crazy? Why are you going to go ask her brain why she did those things? Maybe her brain knows, maybe it doesn't. That's crazy. Don't ask her. Watch her. And men, if you can accept your woman for who she is and never treat her judgmentally, she will tell you everything. And I learned that I was too judgmental in my first relationship, and she hid things from me. Not in a bad way, just I understood at a certain point I wanted her to share with me, and I fucked up by lacking masculinity in certain ways, even as an overall masculine guy, because I didn't, trust her. Now that's feminine, supposedly, right? I wasn't able to put my big boy pants on and trust her enough to not be judgmental, for her to express herself, right? That's the man's job. Really, it's not complicated. The man's job is to provide feelings of safety and security and the strong fucking masculine presence so that she feels safe to express her wonderful femininity, which is the only thing we care about in the first place, guys. Now, we care about the part where society views us favorably if we have a certain type of woman on our arm. Sure, of course. But I'm saying beyond that, when it's in a vacuum and it's just you and her enjoying each other's company, and a lot of guys don't like women. Can we face that? Mindful exposures, if you're still here. A lot of guys don't like women. And that's where, they talk about misogyny. That's a real thing. A lot of guys really do hate women. It's just a fucking fact. I love women. Always have. I like being around them. I like watching them when they're doing all their girly he stuff, even if it doesn't involve me whatsoever. And I'm not participating, I was never in the fucking sewing circle, but yeah, I might want to, I remember being a teenager and showing up, at girls' bedrooms or whatever. It's like, yeah, and they're just sort of doing their he thing. It's just like, yeah, we're hanging out and now we're leaving. Me and my buddy, we'd just go in there and hang out, right? And then we left. That's genuinely enjoying a female's company, right? For what it is. And they enjoyed our company. And then we said, see you later. Bye. Have a nice night. You know, a woman hater ain't going to do that. Why would they? But, you know, I feel bad for these women. You know, imagine society tells the woman she has to define herself in some way. And again, this is not this way anymore. This is the Ozzie and the Harriet and Leave It to Beaver. You know, oh, go get a man, have some kids, then society will provide him with a living as long as he can actually manage to not be, you know, not to fall victim to alcoholism or womanizing or whatever, you know, and stay out of jail, you know, and act halfway right. Then yeah, he'll have a wage and not be a gambler, or, you know, not waste the money, not get tricked out of the money. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, but it's to say to the woman, okay, perform as a housewife, and then you'll be given what seems like safety and security. Meanwhile, that was only temporary to build up society, right? So in some ways, they're victims of this. Well, but see, you know, I'm not calling you a girly girl. It's that, you know, what I'm talking about is when I'm interacting with a woman and I'm just standing there like my dad with a goofy look on my face doing the bobblehead, and she's just doing her version of a he, whatever that is. It doesn't have to be girly. It's just it's providing that space for her to do her expression of her own femininity. Right? It doesn't have to look a specific type of way. You see what I mean? It's just, I know in that moment that it's just like, who I am as a person is just kind of neither here nor there. I'm just standing there with a big goofy expression, you know, with the bobblehead, you know, just doing my thing, and she's doing whatever her version of a he is. But it's her version of it. It's not everybody else's version. You know, whatever that is. It might just be she wants to cook. She wants to prepare a vegan meal, right? I've been around those chicks. Or she wants to, you know, she wants to be in the garden, or not even the garden. You know, she wants to be doing something, right? It doesn't have to be, you know, a submissive, you know, I'm a girly girl, you know, little girl type of thing. It's just, it could be anything. Do you think we care? We don't give a fuck. Just, we don't care. Whatever it is, do it. Because you know what we want. I mean, obviously, historically, as long as that's going to happen at some point, who gives a fuck from the male perspective? And if men would recognize that, it would help things along too. It's like, yeah, buddy, it's a give and take, quid pro quo. Yeah. And I don't, do you think I care? It's just, it's a thing that I know how to do. It's like, yeah, I can just stand there with a goofy expression and fucking bobble my head and chuckle, right? I've seen my dad do it. It's not that complicated, right? And then she just does whatever she does, you know, whatever that is. But I call it he, because, you know, from my perspective, you know, strongly identified as a man. And then, see, you can turn all this on its head. You know, people get mad at all these pronouns and they get mad at all this gender identity. Well, I was born into a physical body with lots of testosterone, and I strongly identify as male. So I just call it butch. I'll say, yeah, I'm butch. What, you can't have a 5'10", 145-pound guy with testosterone who's butch? Of course you can, right? And how's that that's not oppressing anybody. That can't be any more oppressive than a big tough lesbian. Yeah, she's butch too. That's where the expression comes from. I'll just turn it on its head. They think they're going to, these man haters think they're going to tell me something. I'm butch. Hey, bitch, I'm butch. What do you want from me? I didn't choose what body to be born into. Maybe if I was born into a female body, maybe I would be butch. I don't fucking know. Who knows? Who cares? I'm here, you know. I may or may not be queer, and you know, even if I am, I'm butch. So what's the fucking difference? Right? What's the fucking difference? You know, I'll go kink community if we have to. Now I'm pretty fucking prudish overall, but You know, I'll fit that into the so-called kink community. Whatever. I mean, you know, these are just labels. It's a framework. These are containers, right? You know. And then if they don't accept me, that doesn't say anything about me. Because I've been to a coffee shop in Capitol Hill, Seattle, where the Chaz and the Chop later on was, and with a rainbow flag in the window, and I've walked in there and said, "May I have the bathroom key?" And a big tough lesbian who maybe could have kicked my ass, I don't know, looked at me like she hated my guts, but she always slid that bathroom key across the counter because she was practicing what she claimed to believe in, meaning she's going to treat everybody like human beings. You know, even this high testosterone dude from the South, you know, talking all crazy. Thank you. Have a nice day. And I'm going to not shoot up in the bathroom because I don't do drugs. I'm going to bring the key back. And I'm going to treat the trans people like humans because that's what I do. I'm not treating the trans people like human beings because I want the bathroom key. I'm going to do it because they're human beings and I treat human beings like human beings. Although I'm seeing that as not a great thing. I'm starting to see what humanity actually is well, wait a minute, this is not, you know, why am I treating them well? Well, probably for my own purposes. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Bye.